Ever end up in bed with your best friend? What happened after? She was my best friend, someone I'd liked from the moment we met. But I never said anything, never acted on it because, well, you don't mess with a good thing, do you? We had a great friendship, and I didn't want to risk that. But I've come to realize that in trying to protect what we had, I might have been the one who ended up breaking it. Things took that first real turn when our mutual friend dropped the bombshell about her feelings for me. I'll admit, I was floored. It was like finding out that the thing you'd secretly hoped for all along was actually possible, but at the same time it terrified me, because suddenly everything felt more fragile. And you know what? Maybe that's why I hesitated. Maybe that's why, when I asked her if it was true, I did it in the most awkward way possible. I wanted to know, but I was scared of what knowing would mean. And when she confirmed it, when she admitted that she'd liked me too, I felt this rush of emotions that I wasn't ready for. Relief, excitement, fear, and something else, something darker that I didn't want to acknowledge at the time. Because if we both felt the same way, then why hadn't we done anything about it sooner? What were we so afraid of? Turns out she'd been seeing someone else. Not seriously, she said. Just something that happened because she didn't think I'd ever feel the same way. It stung. It really did. But I convinced myself that we could get past it, that we could finally be honest with each other and see where things might go. But that was just the beginning of the complications. After that night, we ended up in bed together. Things didn't go back to normal. We tried, of course. We went back to our usual hangouts, acted like nothing had changed, but it was there, always lurking beneath the surface. I could feel it every time I looked at her, every time our hands brushed or we found ourselves alone. It was like we were playing with fire, and sooner or later, we were going to get burned. And that's exactly what happened. A few weeks after that night, I started noticing little things, changes in her behavior, the way she avoided certain topics, the way she'd get quiet whenever her phone buzzed. I tried to brush it off, but it gnawed at me. And then one night, when we were supposed to hang out, she canceled at the last minute. Said she wasn't feeling well, but something about the way she said it didn't sit right with me. So, I did something I'm not proud of. I drove by her place, and there, parked out front, was his car, the guy she'd been seeing before. I felt sick, angry, betrayed, but mostly I felt like an idiot. I sat there in my car for what felt like hours, just staring at that damn car, trying to make sense of what was happening. Had I been wrong all along? Had she just been playing me? I didn't know what to think. But what I did know was that I couldn't keep sitting there, stewing in my own thoughts. So I drove off, trying to convince myself that maybe there was some explanation, some reason that didn't involve her cheating on me. The next day, I confronted her. I couldn't help myself. I had to know the truth, even if it meant hearing something I didn't want to hear. At first, she denied it, said I was being paranoid, but when I told her I'd seen his car, she broke down. She confessed that she'd seen him again, but swore it wasn't what I thought. She said she'd been confused, that she didn't know how to handle everything that had happened between us, and that she'd turned to him out of habit, not because she wanted to be with him. I wanted to believe her. Hell, a part of me still did. But the trust had been shattered, and it wasn't something that could be easily put back together. We argued, said things we didn't mean, and in the end, I walked away, feeling more lost than ever. But that wasn't the end of it. Not by a long shot. Over the next few weeks, we tried to piece things back together. We'd have long conversations, sometimes late into the night, trying to figure out what we were to each other and what we wanted. But no matter how hard we tried, we couldn't escape the tension. It was like there was this invisible wall between us that neither of us knew how to break down. And then, just when I thought things couldn't get more complicated, she dropped another bombshell. She might be pregnant. It hit me like a freight train. I didn't know how to react. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me, and I was free-falling with no idea where I'd land. We talked about it, about what it would mean if she was pregnant, about what we'd do. But it was all hypothetical until she took the test. When she called me to say it was negative, I felt this overwhelming mix of relief and guilt. Relief because I wasn't ready to be a father, especially not in the middle of all this chaos. Guilt because a part of me had already started imagining what it would be like, and now that possibility was gone. But as if that wasn't enough, she also told me that she'd told him, the other guy, about us. I couldn't believe it. I felt like every time we took a step forward, we ended up 2 steps back. And now he wanted to talk to me? I didn't know what to expect, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. That night, when he showed up at my door, I was ready for a fight. But instead, He was calm, almost resigned. We sat down, and he told me that he'd known something was up for a while, that she'd been distant, and that he'd been trying to figure out what was going on. When she finally told him, he said he wasn't surprised, but that didn't make it hurt any less. I didn't know what to say. I felt like I was caught in the middle of something I didn't fully understand, like I was being pulled in two different directions and didn't know which way to go. He told me that he was done, that he didn't want to be a part of this mess anymore, and that he was stepping back. But before he left, he looked me dead in the eye and said something that stuck with me ever since. You better figure out what you want, because if you don't, you're going to lose her. And this time, it won't be because of me. After he left, I sat there, replaying his words over and over in my head. I knew he was right. I needed to figure out what I wanted, and I needed to do it fast. But the problem was, I didn't know what I wanted. I was so wrapped up in the mess we'd created that I couldn't see a way out. The next day, I met up with her, and we talked, really talked. We laid everything out on the table, our fears, our doubts, our hopes. It was the first time in a long time that we were truly honest with each other. We both admitted that we were scared. Scared of what we felt for each other. Scared of what it would mean to take that leap. Scared of what would happen if we didn't. And in that moment, I realized something. I didn't want to lose her. Despite everything that had happened, despite all the confusion and the mistakes, I still wanted to be with her. I just didn't know how to make it work. Neither of us did. So, we decided to take a break. We needed time to figure things out, time to heal, time to decide if this was something worth fighting for. It wasn't an easy decision, and it wasn't one we made lightly, but we both knew it was the right thing to do. For a while, we went our separate ways. We still talked, still saw each other occasionally, but it wasn't the same. There was a distance between us that hadn't been there before, a distance that I wasn't sure we could ever bridge. During that time, I threw myself into work, into hobbies, into anything that would keep my mind off of her. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. I'd see her name pop up on my phone, and my heart would skip a beat. I'd catch myself thinking about her at the most random times, wondering what she was doing, if she was thinking about me too. And then, one day, out of the blue, she called. It was a simple conversation at first, small talk, catching up, nothing too deep. But then she said something that caught me off guard. "I miss you," she said, her voice soft, almost hesitant. I didn't know how to respond. I missed her too, more than I wanted to admit. But I was still scared. Scared of getting hurt again, scared of making the same mistakes, scared of what would happen if we tried and failed. But before I could say anything, she continued, "I've been doing a lot of thinking, about us, about everything that's happened, and I realized something. I don't want to keep running from this. From us. I know it's not going to be easy, and I know we have a lot to work through, but I want to try. I want to see if we can make this work." Her words hung in the air between us, and for the first time in a long time, I felt a sense of clarity. She was right. We couldn't keep running from what we felt for each other. We couldn't keep pretending that everything would just magically work itself out. If we wanted this, really wanted this, we were going to have to fight for it. So that's what we did. We started seeing each other again, but this time we were more cautious. We took things slow, talked through our issues, and tried to rebuild the trust that had been broken. It wasn't easy, and there were times when I wondered if we were just delaying the inevitable, but we kept pushing forward. One night, after a particularly long and emotional conversation, she looked at me with those eyes that had always managed to pierce right through me and said, "I love you." It wasn't the first time she'd said it, but this time, it felt different. This time it felt like a promise, like she was ready to put everything on the line for us. "I love you too," I replied, my voice barely more than a whisper, and I meant it. In that moment, I knew that whatever happened, whatever challenges we faced, I wanted to be with her. I wanted to see where this could go. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs when you least expect it. A few months into our renewed relationship, things started to feel off. It wasn't anything obvious at first, just little things. She seemed distant sometimes, lost in her thoughts. I'd ask if something was wrong and she'd smile and say everything was fine, but I could tell she was holding something back. I tried to give her space, to let her come to me when she was ready, but it was hard. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something she wasn't telling me, and it was eating away at me. And then, one night, she finally opened up. We were sitting on her couch, watching a movie, when she suddenly turned to me, her face serious. "There's something I need to tell you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart started pounding. I had no idea what she was about to say, but I knew it wasn't going to be good. "What is it?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. She took a deep breath, and then the words came tumbling out. "I've been talking to him again." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "Him?" I asked, even though I knew exactly who she meant. "The guy I was seeing before," she clarified, her voice trembling. "He reached out to me a while ago, and we started talking. At first it was just casual, you know? But then, I don't know, things got complicated." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. After everything we'd been through, after all the work we'd done to try and rebuild our relationship, she'd gone back to him? It felt like a betrayal all over again. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice barely hiding the hurt and anger I was feeling. "I didn't know how," she admitted, tears welling up in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought I could handle it, that it wouldn't mean anything, but..." "But what?" I demanded, my patience wearing thin. "But I realized I still have feelings for him," she said, her voice breaking. "And now I don't know what to do." It was like my worst fears had come true. I felt like the ground was crumbling beneath me, like everything we'd worked so hard to rebuild was falling apart all over again. "I don't understand," I said, shaking my head. "I thought we were making progress. I thought we were finally on the same page." "I thought so too," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "But when he reached out, all those old feelings came rushing back, and I couldn't stop myself. I didn't want to hurt you, but I'm so confused. I don't know who I want to be with." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. She didn't know who she wanted to be with. After everything we'd been through, she was still torn between me and him. I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to beg her to choose me, to remind her of all the good times we'd had, of all the reasons we should be together. But another part of me was just tired. Tired of the back and forth, tired of the uncertainty, tired of feeling like I was constantly fighting a losing battle. "I can't do this anymore," I finally said, my voice hollow. "I love you, but I can't keep being second choice."